Is Antony already destined to be a flop for Manchester United? And will he go down as the most expensive mistake in our history? Welcome to the United Stands. I'm Mark Goldbridge, and today we're going to do a brutally honest review on Antony and ask the question, is there a way back? Because factually, when you look at the stats, it's even worse than the reality. And I think the first place to start on this is, and I'll be very interested to see the comments because I can't lie. I can almost want to say I can't speak about how bad he is, but I can't lie. This was the most exciting signing for me in that summer when we bought the likes of Eriksen and Casemiro and Martinez. This was a player for Ajax that was massively exciting. But I felt that at the time, as much as it was exciting, there was always a warning, and Memphis Depay was that warning. Antony at Ajax was incredibly good. And when you compare his assists, his goals, his crossing at Ajax to Manchester United, it's like a completely different player. But the red herring is the Eredivisie compared to the Premier League, and we've seen this mistake before. So the first thing I think I have to defend Antony with here is before we get into the reality, and we will be comparing him, how he's done this season, to Garnacho on things like crosses and Rashford in relation to defensive work rate. But it ain't a pretty picture. Some of it's quite surprising, but it ain't a pretty picture. And there really isn't a positive on this. There is the off-field matters. I choose to park those because I don't think that they can either be used as an excuse for his poor form this season now or as a reason why we shouldn't have bought him. We're talking about a footballer. Manchester United spent a lot of money on a footballer, and there for me was the biggest mistake because Antony has always been defined by two things that were really out of his control. I would say if we'd spent £45 million on Antony, would we still be having the same conversation? We would, because he's not going to achieve anything less or more with that price tag. But the price tag of £82 million is ridiculous for a player of this quality. Realistically, we shouldn't have paid any more than 50. We were linked to him in early June. We were looking at him in early June. We didn't do the deal until late August. And Ajax pulled our pants down and absolutely rinsed us. And it has to go down as one of the worst deals we've done in the last decade. And oh my God, have we done plenty. The second thing that I think has always been an issue with Antony, and I put this down to British reporting, we're very bad at this. We don't need to name names. When at the start of his career he did the little spin, some people didn't like that and saw it as a reason to dislike him. And I don't know what it's like in your country, but in mine, we're quite bad at this, taking instant dislikes to people who we think are arrogant. So that was a problem for Antony as well. But pushing aside the transfer, pushing aside the bias, the reality stares you straight in the face. And we saw it with Man City at the weekend. When he came on at that game, some people criticised Ten Hag for the substitutions. You've got to make those substitutions. It's March. We're playing massive games. We're playing a lot of games. And everybody makes substitutes these days. And when Ten Hag looks at the bench, he's got to bring on Antony. He's got to bring on the players that he did because he's got to restore some energy levels. His performance in that game was almost like going down to 10 men. He couldn't retain the ball, he kept giving it away, and he was miles off the pace. And only he is to blame for that. Erik Ten Hag has obviously put a lot of faith in him, and it's a mistake, potentially. But Manchester United is a big club, and the fan base have been quite patient with him. But I think that patience is running thin now, and it's clearly running thin with the manager. Managers make mistakes. Pep Guardiola signed players, and they flopped. Sir Alex Ferguson certainly did it as well. I think to use this as a stick to beat Ten Hag is agenda-driven because lots of great managers have bought players for expensive mistakes. And this is looking like one. But why did he do it? Why did he do it? Why was I excited about it? Why were we all excited about it? Well, only when you look at the stats can you delve into that. When you look at Antony at Ajax and you compare him to Manchester United's career, it's unbelievable, the drop-off. It's incredible. Now, he's got no right foot. It stands out like a mile. People talk about him being a flop and why we bought him. But there is always reasonings for that. This is not a player, and we've seen it before. When Sir Alex Ferguson bought Beppe and Oberton, you were like, why did we buy them? They're rubbish. But when you look at Antony, there was a reason to do it. In his Ajax career, he was actually scoring a goal virtually every other game. 0.44 goals per game. That's massive. It is the Eredivisie, but that is massive. In relation to assists, again, it was 0.33 per game. That's an assist every 3 games. And crosses per 90, 4.6. He's now averaging 1.4 crosses per game, 4.6 at Ajax. This is a major drop-off. This is a player who that Ajax, who were playing in the Champions League, you know, Eredivisie is not the Premier League, but Ajax were playing in the Champions League and Antony was performing. He's putting nearly 5 crosses in per game. He's now barely putting in 1. He's scoring a goal every other game. I think he's scored 1 goal all season. And he's getting an assist every 3 games. He hasn't had 1 all season. So you can say, well, the Eredivisie to the Premier League is the warning sign there. But there's plenty of players that have come in from the Eredivisie into the Premier League and performed fantastically well. You know, look at someone like Dennis Bergkamp. It can happen. So I think actually his drop-off cannot just be explained as Eredivisie to the Premier League. It's also incredible. To go from 5 crosses per 90 to 1, what? So you can't get a cross in the Premier League anymore? It's almost like he's lost everything that Ten Hag and some of us saw in him has completely disappeared. He doesn't put crosses into the box. He doesn't create goals. He doesn't score goals. When you compare him to Garnacho this season, he has scored 7 goals, Garnacho, via Y-Scout. Antony has got 1. But it's deeper than that. When you look at their shots per 90, the situation with Garnacho is that he has a shot percentage of on target 31%, 2.6 shots per game, 10% goal conversion. So 1 every 10 shot, Garnacho scoring, which isn't particularly bad when you compare it to everybody else. 2.6 shots per game. Antony is having 2 shots per game, 25% on target, 2% end up being a goal. It's just shockingly bad. On assists, it's not even worth talking about. I mean, Garnacho is averaging 1 assist every 10 games. It's not amazing. Antony's not even he's on a 0. It's just, for a winger, this is absolutely shocking. We've mentioned crosses per 90. Garnacho's putting in 3 crosses per 90. Antony's putting in 1.4. Passes per 90 is about the same, you know, about 35 passes per game, 81%, you know. But a lot of these passes are just, you know, you need a player like Antony and Garnacho to be creating and scoring goals, and he's just not doing it. The only thing that he comes out better than Garnacho really on is successful defensive actions, and that's your work rate, your tackles. He's averaging 7.4 per game, and Garnacho is at 6.3. But it's stats, reality, eye test. The cold, harsh fact is, Ian Robben had no right foot, and he was one of the best wingers I've seen play in the Premier League, one of the best wingers I've seen in the last 20 years. So that's not an excuse. I think that with Antony, my patience has run out, and I'm sure your patience has run out. Is there a way back for this player? Potentially, but it's a long, long road, and if I was a betting person, as a percentage, I'd say less than 20% chance that he turns this around, because it's year 2 now. And I think in some ways, we've had injury. In some ways, we've had World Cups halfway through last season. We've had the issues at the start of the season off the field. But football can be an escapism, and football can be a reality. And if there'd been glimpses, I think people would say he just needs a run in the team. But when I watch him, mistakes, lack of creativity, really bad at shooting, like really bad, like hardly ever on target and hardly ever scores. What is it we're getting from him? Somebody said the other day, let's put him at left back because we haven't got a left back and he tackles a bit. His whole game is abysmal. Now, the feedback from within the club really like him. Like, he's really well liked, really determined, really wants to be a success. So the personality feedback is good, but we're not dismantling the person. We're not hating the person. We are brutally dissecting a Manchester United player's suitability to be a Manchester United player of the future. And at the moment, absolutely not. This looks like a very, very expensive mistake. How would he turn it around? Well, to turn it around, in my mind, doesn't actually feel like it's that impossible, because, I go back to the amazing numbers he was putting in the Eredivisie in relation to creativity and goals. You're still shooting at the same goal. It's still the same size. You're still on the wing. You can still put a cross in. Like, we haven't got fullbacks in the Premier League that are, latching onto you like a magnet that you can't have any space. It's decision making. And that is football IQ. And this is something we've mentioned about a few of our wingers. It's the personality to be a Manchester United player. You look at Onana in goal. He's sunk in the first few months. Is he finding his way back to the surface? It looks like it. But Antony just seems lost. I mentioned the kissing of the badge when he scored against Newport or Wigan. And some people said I was being harsh. But I detected a personality trait there that was wrong. It's the understanding of what a Man United player is. And, that's not enough. People were getting on Rashford's back because he put an Instagram post about a goal in a Manchester derby when he's Manc born and bred and he should be just gutted that we've lost. It's reading the room. And I think Antony is either not equipped or doesn't understand the enormity of the club he's playing for and the intensity and consistency and decision-making required. Mentality, again. We've mentioned this about recruitment. We need to be looking at the mentality of players, because good players sink at big clubs. Memphis Depay is a good player, but he sunk at Manchester United. And I think Antony is very much in that. To turn this around, he's got to simplify his game. He's got to look at how I'm going to get crosses into the box, how I'm going to make sure that I'm shooting at the right opportunity. And I don't think he will turn it around. I would love it if he did, because it's an £82 million problem that we're going to really struggle to write off. But brutally, we've dissected the problems there, and I don't think many people will disagree. You can get your comments in below. One thing I probably will look at over the future weeks is this is a really interesting conversation to compare our wingers this season around what they're doing. Garnacho comes out of it looking reasonably good. He's got a few goals. In fact, he's averaging more goals per game than Rashford. He does put more crosses in than any of our wingers. His defensive work rate is good, and he's 19 compared to 24-year-old Antony and Marcus Rashford's 26. So Garnacho comes out of this still needing a lot of work. He's not getting enough assists, in my opinion, but he comes out of it really, really well. I mean, a glimpse on Rashford. We're not here to talk about Rashford, but defensive actions per 90, 6.3 for Garnacho, 7.4 for Antony, 2.9 for Marcus Rashford. A lot of people talk about his defensive work rate. Sometimes it's worth looking at the stats just to prove just how bad his is. And yet, he's not scoring as many goals anymore, and he's not creating as much as Garnacho. So, again, the wingers at United have become a huge problem. But on Antony, the future ain't looking good, is it? Get your comments in below. Let me know what your thoughts are. I'll speak to you on the next one. And also, do not forget to support the Goldbridge Saves Football Podcast. It's out now. Please do scan the QR code on your camera phone. Go and give it a listen. Give us your thoughts. Join the movement. Thank you very much. Speak to you on the next one.